Hey everybody, it is day 246 of our 2020 Focus Bible reading, and we are on the book of Revelation in chapter 6. And as we were saying, as I said in the past week, 4, 5, and 6 are really they're tied together. This is the same event that's happening and a vision that's going on. And at the end of chapter 6 is a question that's asked that's actually answered by chapter 7 and 8. So these are larger units, but they belong together. And where we've been is we've been looking at, okay, God is worshipped and worthy. We're told he's sitting on the throne, that Jesus then is the lamb who is slain, and then he's worthy to open the seals on the scroll. And now we get to the point where the seals are being opened. And this is what we read. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the 7 seals. Then I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror, bent on conquest. When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. When the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hands. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the 4 living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine." When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the 4 living creatures say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth, to kill by the sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony they had maintained. They called out in a loud voice, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" Then each of them was given a white robe, and they were told to wait a little longer until the full number of their fellow servants, their brothers and sisters, were killed just as they had been. I watched as he opened the 6th seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red, and the stars in the sky fell to earth as figs drop from a fig tree when shaken by a strong wind. The heavens receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the princes, the generals, the rich, the mighty, and everyone else, both slave and free, hid in caves and among the rocks of the mountains. They called to the mountains and the rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can withstand it?" All right. So this is where we begin to get into where people begin to make interpretations and begin to ask the question of, okay, when's this going to happen? And that is where you really, I mean, honestly, you're going to fall into so many different interpretations because there are so many out there. Because this is written in apocalyptic language, and people want to take literally what is meant to be taken figuratively, and people are wanting to add a timeline to this when a timeline isn't necessarily what's in focus here. Again, this is about who's in charge when everything else around you feels like it's falling apart. For these first century Christians, who are kind of the third generations of Christians now, heading into a second generation, like the second century, they're looking at it going, okay, Rome's in charge. Rome is starting to now persecute and execute people because of their faith in Christ. Now we're beginning to enter a time where they're going to face incredible levels of persecution that they're not going to be able to escape, because the empire is the world they know, and it's all over the world they know. And so they're about to go through a tumultuous time, a tribulation, which gets used in a lot of different ways when you're reading the book of Revelation, but it means a time of trouble, a time of severe testing. They're about to experience that. And so John is writing to them, and this again is showing that, okay, for every seal that gets opened, for every bad thing that comes along, that the Lamb is in charge of this still. It doesn't mean that he's causing these things, but there is certainly an aspect of allowing them. You can't escape that in this passage. It's one of the challenges with Christian, thinkers throughout generations and everyday Christians is, why do bad things happen to good people? Is God not paying attention? And in this passage, we're told, no, Jesus is the one opening the seals, that this is occurring under his authority and is known to him. Now, the first four riders, the first four seals are the four horsemen of the apocalypse, as it's called. But you have the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse. And really, then it gets to the fifth seal, and now all of a sudden you hear the cry of the martyrs, those who were witnesses to Christ. And so there is a real sense in which the order here is the white horse, red horse, black horse, and pale horse are the ones who actually are leading to the death of these Christian martyrs. So what's in play here is the empire, as being described. That what's happening is an empire's. It starts with conquest. Well, that's what the empire did. The Roman Empire followed up after the fall of kind of the Greek states and took over by conquest the known world. Then you have the white horse, the red horse, who takes peace from the earth. Pax Romana was the call of Rome, but it was peace by the sword. And it's interesting that I think the description here is so amazing. It says, when the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. It didn't have. It's funny. It doesn't say it had had power to make war. It simply took peace. And once you take the peace away, oh man, then there's trouble. And that is the story of the Roman Empire, is constantly fighting to try to keep the peace, and why they did it by the sword, which I think is why it says to him was given a large sword. That's, the threat of violence is what kept the peace. And so it's a very interesting little illusion there. And so then you have what follows in the wake of war is famine. That's what's described in the third seal, because people are basically just making enough to eat enough for that day. That's what this is described here: 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages. It's enough to just get by on the day. And if anything happens to that, now they're going to be desperate. Scarcity is going to become an issue. And then the fourth seal, of course, is you have death that follows on the heels of that. And I think it's fascinating to me. The part of it is that they were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by the sword. And when you read earth, anytime in the scriptures you read earth, it's so easy for us to think globe, because that's the way we see the earth, and that's not the way they saw the earth in the first century. When they talk about earth, they talk about the land, and it's the known land. There was plenty of land they didn't even know about when they were writing these words. So be careful not to think globally when they're thinking more locally, because that's what's going on here. We just hear earth and, a fourth of the land. I think it's fascinating, too, that even though the first three riders bring conquest, war, and famine, that it falls to only a select group of people, a fourth of the earth, a fourth of the known kind of empire, because that's the way it works. That there are always portions of the community that pay a higher price for the activities of the majority, and that's what we're seeing in this passage. And Christians did make up some of the most poor in the ancient world. That's why it was a popular faith among the slaves, because they could actually join it. It was a religious caste that they could be a part of. So you didn't have great wealth within the Christian community, which means that the Christians did suffer a great deal through all of these things that were going on, because they were in the lowest rungs of the society. And so then the fifth seal comes, and it's the cry of the martyrs. And, how long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood? How long? And, we're told that each one was given a white robe, which is a sign of victory. All right, that's the symbol of a white robe. And then they were told something: wait a little longer. This is the part, goes back to what we read in the New Testament. God is not absent. He is not slow. He is patient. That's what he is. Wait a little longer. And it is told, until the full number of their fellow servants, their brothers and sisters, were killed just as they had been. Remember, we follow a lamb that was slain. We should not be surprised that as followers, if we're following that lamb, that there could be times where our lives are forfeit, just as his was. That as followers of him, that's not out of the question. That being a Christian doesn't mean health, wealth, and everything goes great your entire life. No, sometimes following Jesus actually costs. Because it does. We already yield our lives to him. And sometimes it does take that very thing from us. But that isn't outside of God's control. And then he opens the sixth seal, and you have all of these things, and they're not meant to be taken as literally as we think, because you have a great earthquake, you have all the stars falling from the heavens, you have all these things going on, heaven even being rolled back, islands and mountains removed from their place. All right, that means leveled. But then the very next part of this is then the kings of the earth, the princes, generals, rich, the mighty, and everyone else, both slave and free, hid in caves and among the rocks of the mountains that don't exist anymore because they were removed from their place. So you have to understand this is symbolic in nature and just meant to portray destruction. And then they call for their hiding places to become their graves. That's how bad it is. And then you read these words: for the great day of their wrath has come, and who can withstand it? That's what we're going to find out tomorrow. So we will see you then. Have a good one.